As night settles over a remote valley in northern Alaska, the world grows quieter and smaller. Snow falls steadily. The wind softens. Inside a cluster of simple shelters, people move slowly, sharing warmth and familiar routines. Nothing dramatic happens here. This is a quiet story, not of heroes or struggle, but of ordinary people resting together in an unforgiving season. Tonight, we move gently through one winter night, listening to the soft sounds of wind and breath, letting the pace remain unhurried. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching since today? Simply allow the day to loosen its hold and let the night settle naturally around you. Then, at your own pace, allow the story to drift onward and carry you gently towards sleep. Snow falls steadily over the interior of Alaska. The city lights are far behind now, reduced to a memory somewhere beyond the mountains. Out here, the land opens into a wide, frozen valley where the wind moves freely and the cold settles without resistance. The temperature has already dropped well below zero, and it will continue to fall through the night. There is no traffic noise, no distant hum of machines, only wind, snow, and the quiet pressure of winter. This is a place where sleep is not assumed. It must be earned. There are places on Earth where sleep no longer means rest, where closing your eyes is not the end of the day, but the beginning of a careful negotiation with the environment around you, a negotiation that continues even as the body lies still, a negotiation where mistakes are not corrected easily. Here, sleeping incorrectly is not uncomfortable. It is dangerous. In places like this, the cold does not announce itself with drama. It works slowly, patiently, pulling heat away a little at a time. A body that rests without preparation can drift into stillness and never return. This valley is one of those places. And tonight, a small group of people is preparing to sleep inside it. The shelters sit low against the snow, scattered across a shallow rise at the edge of the valley. They are not cabins, not houses, not anything meant for comfort. Each is a narrow metal structure, curved and reinforced, partially buried by drifting snow. From a distance, they look almost temporary, as if the land could erase them overnight. Inside, the space is tight. There is no room to stretch out fully. No room for privacy. Everything is shared. The air, the warmth, the small margin of safety they have built together. They sleep close, not out of intimacy, but necessity. Bodies placed carefully, side by side, to conserve heat. Movement kept minimal. Breathing slow, measured. This is not sleeping alone. This is sleeping together, because survival demands it. Sarah Whitman is the first to settle in. She moves deliberately, conserving energy, her motions economical and practiced. Sarah is in her late 30s, tall and lean, with narrow shoulders and a posture shaped by years of physical work in harsh environments. Her hair, once light brown, is pulled back tightly beneath a wool cap, strands already stiff with frost near her temples. Her face carries a calm that is not natural, but learned. Sarah is not unkind, but she is reserved. She speaks when necessary, and listens more than she talks. Years ago, during a winter deployment farther south, She lost a colleague to exposure after a routine oversight. Since then, she has carried herself differently, more attentive, more careful, unwilling to assume that things will simply work out. Tonight, she checks the seals on the shelter door twice before sitting down. She adjusts the shared insulation mats with her gloved hands, ensuring there are no gaps between bodies and floor. Only then does she allow herself to lower her weight and rest against the curved wall. Across from her sits Daniel Harper. Daniel is younger, early 30s, with a broader frame and hands that still carry the calluses of mechanical work. He has dark hair and a square jaw. His expression often caught somewhere between alertness and quiet concern. Daniel tends to worry, not openly, but constantly, his mind running through contingencies, even when nothing is actively wrong. He is the one who double-checks equipment, the one who counts rations more than once, the one who notices small changes in the wind. Daniel has learned to channel his anxiety into usefulness. Tonight, he unpacks the food. The meal is simple. A single pot of soup, reheated carefully over a compact burner earlier in the evening. It is thick, heavy with starch and fat, designed to provide energy rather than pleasure. The steam has long since faded, replaced by a dull warmth that must be eaten quickly before it disappears entirely. Daniel passes the cup to Sarah first. She takes it with a nod, blowing gently across the surface before drinking. There is no conversation. Words waste energy, and the cold listens for any excuse to steal heat. One by one, the others take their turns. Small sips, measured bites. No one lingers. This is not a meal meant to be remembered. It is a meal meant to sustain. Near the entrance, curled against a pack of gear, lies Bear. Bear is a medium-sized mixed-breed dog, roughly 5 years old, with thick, dark fur and pale eyes that reflect the light in the shelter. He was not planned for this journey. He appeared 2 winters ago at a remote outpost and never left. No one knows where he came from, only that he knows the cold instinctively. Bear does not whine. He does not pace. He waits. As the group settles, he lifts his head briefly, watching each person with quiet attention before lowering it again. His body presses against the nearest human, sharing warmth without ceremony. No one tells him to move. He belongs here now. The wind rises outside. It pushes against the metal walls with a low, constant pressure, testing seams and edges. Snow skitters across the surface, filling shallow grooves, erasing footprints from earlier in the evening. Inside the shelter, the sound is muted, but ever present. A reminder, sleep does not come all at once. It arrives in stages, cautiously. Sarah lies back, pulling the shared thermal layer higher across her chest. She keeps her boots on. There is no room to remove them safely, and tucks her gloved hands beneath her arms. She closes her eyes, but her breathing remains controlled, deliberate. Daniel adjusts his position slightly, careful not to create a gap between bodies. He focuses on the rhythm of breath around him, letting his own slow to match. Someone shifts. Someone exhales sharply. Bear sighs and settles deeper into the narrow space. The shelter grows still. This is what sleep looks like here. Not escape, not comfort, but balance, a careful holding pattern between warmth and cold, awareness and rest. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside, the group remains close, sharing heat, sharing silence, sharing the unspoken understanding that tonight, survival depends not on strength or speed, but on patience and togetherness. They will sleep, not deeply, not easily, but enough to wake again. Morning does not arrive gently in the interior of Alaska. It does not stretch or brighten slowly. It simply appears, faint and reluctant, as if unsure whether it belongs here at all. A thin blue light presses against the horizon, barely lifting itself above the frozen land before stalling, suspended and weak. The temperature has not risen. If anything, the cold has deepened during the night. The air is dry to the point of sharpness, each breath drawing moisture from the body, each exhale vanishing instantly into the pale sky. This is not the cold of storms or drama. This is the cold that endures, the kind that waits. Inside the metal shelter, the group wakes without ceremony. No one stretches fully. No one lingers in stillness longer than necessary. The cold does not allow indulgence. Bodies uncurl carefully, joints stiff, movements measured. Sleep here has not restored them. It has merely paused the loss. Sarah Whitman is awake first. She always is. Her tall, narrow frame unfolds slowly as she shifts her weight, careful not to disturb the fragile warmth they have built overnight. Her face shows little expression, but her eyes are alert, already assessing the light, the sound of the wind, the subtle changes that signal whether the day will be manageable or not. Years ago, during her first winter assignment in the north, she learned the cost of underestimating mornings like this. A colleague had delayed leaving shelter by minutes, waiting for stiffness to ease. Those minutes were enough to change everything. Since then, Sarah trusts the cold to behave exactly as it always does, without mercy. Daniel Harper follows, rolling onto his side with a quiet breath. He rubs his gloved hands together, not to warm them, but to remind himself they are still responsive. Daniel's broad shoulders and solid build make him appear more resilient than he feels. The truth is, his body resists this environment daily. His strength lies not in endurance, but in attention. He listens to the wind outside, noting its pitch and direction, filing the information away. The cold has taught him vigilance. Carelessness here is punished quickly. Bear lifts his head when Daniel moves. The dog's thick fur is rimmed with frost along his back, pale crystals clinging to dark hair. He shakes once, slowly, then presses closer to the nearest body again. Bear does not rush. He understands mornings in this place better than most humans ever will. His instincts tell him when to move and when to conserve energy, when to seek warmth and when to wait. He is neither anxious nor relaxed, only present. Outside, the land reveals itself reluctantly. There are no trees here, no vertical shapes to interrupt the wind. The valley stretches outward in pale gradients of white and blue, broken only by exposed rock and hardened ridges of ice. Snow has not fallen deeply overnight, but what lies on the ground has been sculpted by wind into sharp lines and shallow waves. Each step outside will require attention. There are no forgiving surfaces here. The sun, if it can be called that, hovers low. It does not warm. It does not comfort. Its light is thin, almost fragile, casting long shadows that emphasize the emptiness rather than relieving it. This is not a place designed for circadian rhythms. The body looks for signals that do not exist. Day and night blur into a single extended state of endurance. The group steps outside one by one. Their boots crunch softly, the sound sharp and brittle in the dry air. Sarah pauses, scanning the horizon. The wind moves across the valley in low currents, not strong enough to be dangerous, but persistent enough to drain heat steadily. Daniel checks the exposed equipment nearby. Metal surfaces already stiff, handles reluctant to move. He makes mental notes. Everything takes longer in this cold. Every task costs more energy than it should. A new figure emerges from the neighboring shelter. Michael Torres moves with a slight limp, favoring his right leg as he steps down into the snow. Michael is in his mid-40s, shorter than Sarah, broader through the chest, his face weathered by years of outdoor labor. A former field technician, he carries the quiet confidence of someone who has spent much of his life working in environments that resist control. An old knee injury, the result of a fall during a storm years back, has slowed him but not weakened his resolve. He nods to Sarah in greeting. Words are unnecessary. They both know the routine. Nearby, Emily Ross follows, pulling her hood tighter against her face. Emily is younger, late 20s, slight in build, with sharp eyes that miss very little. She is a data analyst by training, new to extended field conditions, but she adapts quickly. The cold unsettles her, but it has not defeated her. She watches Sarah and Daniel closely, learning through observation, adjusting her movements to match theirs. In places like this, imitation is a form of survival. The air absorbs sound. Voices do not carry far, and even the wind seems muted, as though wrapped in layers of insulation. When someone speaks, the words fall quickly, swallowed by distance. This silence is not peaceful. It is total. It leaves no room for distraction, no background noise to soften thought. Each person hears their own breathing, the movement of blood in their ears, the faint creak of fabric against fabric. Breakfast is brief and functional, energy bars stiff with cold, broken carefully to avoid damaging teeth, a thermos of liquid that is no longer hot, but not yet frozen. They eat standing, backs to the wind, shoulders hunched. No one complains. Complaints waste breath. As the light holds steady, unchanged, Sarah takes a moment to look across the valley. She knows this landscape well enough now to understand its patterns, but not well enough to trust it. Alaska does not reward familiarity. It tolerates it briefly, before reminding you that you do not belong. This is not a place the human body was designed to sleep, or to wake, or to function at all. Every system works harder here. Muscles burn fuel just to remain warm. Skin cracks. Lungs dry. The mind must remain alert even when exhausted. Rest, such as it exists, is shallow and incomplete. And yet, the group stands here, breathing, adjusting gear, preparing to move through another day. They do not speak of comfort. They speak of tasks. of what must be done while the light remains, however weak it may be. The cold will not ease. The valley will not soften. But for now, the wind is manageable, the temperature survivable, the shelter intact. That is enough. They turn inward again, toward their work, toward the shared understanding that in a place like this, survival is not dramatic. It is quiet, methodical, built moment by moment, breath by breath, in a land that offers nothing freely. By mid-morning, the light has not changed. It remains thin and blue, suspended above the valley, without warmth or promise. The cold holds its ground, steady and unyielding, as if the night never truly left. In this place, time does not announce itself clearly. It must be measured through routine, through work begun and completed, through the slow movement of people who have learned not to waste effort. They are not adventurers. No one here speaks of testing limits or chasing danger. The people who remain in this valley did not come seeking hardship. They came because the work required presence, patience, and the willingness to endure conditions that resist comfort at every turn. They stay because someone must. Ethan Miller kneels near a low ridge of exposed rock at the edge of the camp, carefully setting a compact seismic sensor into the frozen ground. He is in his early 40s, medium height, with a slight stoop that comes from years of bending over instruments rather than desks. His hair is light, already thinning, and his face carries a constant look of concentration, as if part of his mind is always listening to something just beyond reach. Ethan speaks softly, even when there is no one nearby. It is a habit formed during long hours of solitary fieldwork, where loud voices feel intrusive. He trusts data more than instinct, numbers more than impressions. Years ago, a misread signal during a routine survey led to a costly delay and a harsh review. Since then, he has learned to be meticulous, patient, and quietly relentless. Out here, his instruments listen to the ground, measuring subtle movements beneath the ice. Movements invisible to the eye, but critical to understanding how this land shifts and settles. A short distance away, Claire Thompson organizes supplies with practiced efficiency. Claire is in her early 50s, sturdy in build, her posture relaxed but purposeful. Her hair, once dark, is streaked with grey and kept tucked beneath a thick cap. Her hands are broad and capable, scarred lightly from years of kitchen work, in environments far less forgiving than most restaurants. Claire is responsible for logistics and meals. Though the word meals feels generous here, she manages rations, fuel, water, and timing, ensuring that calories are available when they are most needed. She has a habit of remembering what people prefer, even when preferences seem irrelevant in the cold. Years ago, during a winter storm at a remote outpost, Claire kept a team functioning through a prolonged isolation simply by maintaining routine. Hot liquids at fixed hours, consistent portions, quiet encouragement. Since then, she has understood that food is not only fuel, it is structure. She checks the inventory again, her breath visible as she exhales, and makes a small adjustment to the day's plan. No announcement is needed. People trust her judgment. Jacob Reed stands slightly apart, eyes lifted toward the sky, his face partially hidden by goggles rimmed with frost. Jacob is in his late 30s, tall and wiry, with movements that are quick but controlled. As a meteorological technician, he reads the air the way others read maps. Wind speed, cloud density, pressure changes. These details matter deeply to him. Jacob learned this attentiveness the hard way. During his first extended winter assignment years earlier, he underestimated a subtle shift in weather patterns. The storm that followed damaged equipment and left the team stranded longer than expected. No one was injured, but the experience left its mark. Since then, Jacob watches constantly, recording even the smallest deviations. His quiet vigilance has earned trust, even if he rarely speaks unless necessary. Near the shelters, Nora Bennett moves slowly from person to person, her presence calm and unobtrusive. Nora is in her early 40s, average height, with a gentle manner that contrasts with the severity of the environment. Her face is lined with concern rather than age, shaped by years of tending to others in difficult conditions. She is a field nurse by training, accustomed to limited supplies and long hours. Nora often works at night, checking on people while they sleep, adjusting layers, ensuring circulation has not been compromised by the cold. She does not wake anyone unless absolutely necessary. A decade ago, during a disaster response in the mountains, she learned how fragile rest can be in extreme conditions, and how essential. Since then, she has treated sleep as something to be protected carefully. Even when it is shallow and incomplete, the group moves through the morning without unnecessary conversation. Tasks are divided naturally, each person stepping into their role without instruction. There is comfort in this predictability. Out here, clarity reduces risk. Bear follows Ethan at a distance, stopping occasionally to sniff the snow or lift his head toward a sound only he seems to hear. The dog's coat blends with the landscape now, dark fur dusted white, his movements efficient and quiet. He is not playful here. He conserves energy, mirroring the humans around him. The valley itself offers no shelter beyond the structures they have built. No trees break the wind. No vegetation softens the ground. Only ice, rock, and open space remain, stretching outward until the eye tires of measuring distance. The cold absorbs sound so completely that even footsteps seem temporary, erased moments after they occur. By early afternoon, the light has already begun to thin again. Though it never truly strengthened, Claire signals that it is time to regroup. She does not raise her voice. A simple gesture is enough. People gather near the shelters, standing close, backs angled away from the wind. She distributes warm liquid from a shared container, not hot, but enough to slow heat loss. Each person takes their portion without comment. There is gratitude here, but it is unspoken. Excess emotion feels misplaced in this environment. Respect is shown through attention and cooperation. Ethan reports quietly on his readings. Jacob responds with a brief update on wind trends. Nora notes a minor concern, a cracked lip, a stiffened joint, and makes a mental plan to address it later. These exchanges form a secondary rhythm beneath the visible work, a quiet network of care that holds the group together. As the afternoon fades, preparations turn subtly toward the coming night. Equipment is secured. Paths between shelters are reinforced against drifting snow. The group knows what will be required when darkness deepens again. They are not heroes. They are not chasing hardship. They are scientists, technicians, caregivers, and planners, doing work that must be done in a place that does not accommodate them. They remain not because the cold invites them, but because the task demands patience, precision, and the steady presence of people willing to endure. As the light withdraws, the valley returns to its muted tones. The group moves closer together again, instinctively, guided by experience rather than instruction. They stay. Darkness in the interior of Alaska does not arrive like night elsewhere. It does not fall suddenly or announce itself with stars. It simply continues. The faint blue light of the afternoon thins, fades, and then never fully returns. What replaces it is not blackness, but a long, muted dimness that stretches across hours without clear edges. There is no reliable signal telling the body when to rest. Inside the shelters, time begins to loosen its grip. Watches are checked less often. The concept of late or early loses meaning. What matters instead is fatigue, hunger, and the quiet calculations each person makes about how much energy they have left. Sarah Whitman feels this distortion more than she admits. Her body wakes when it should not. Alert and tense at hours that once belonged to deep sleep, lying still inside the shelter, she sometimes opens her eyes to complete darkness, convinced she has slept through the night, only to learn later that it is barely past midnight. Her tall, lean frame remains coiled, ready, even when rest is needed. Years ago, after the incident that shaped her caution, she trained herself to wake easily, to never sink too deeply into sleep. In normal places, that vigilance was unnecessary. Here, it feels almost appropriate. Daniel Harper experiences the opposite. Exhaustion pulls him downward without warning. He can sleep for hours, heavy and unmoving, yet wake feeling no more restored than before. His broad shoulders slump more noticeably now, the cold drawing stiffness into his muscles. When he wakes, his thoughts are slow to assemble, as if the darkness has rearranged them overnight. He knows the signs. He has seen them before in others. Disrupted sleep does not announce itself loudly. It erodes quietly. Some nights, Daniel wakes suddenly around 2 or 3 in the morning, heart racing, unsure why. There is no sound, no movement, only the awareness that his body has surfaced into consciousness without permission. He lies there, listening to the breathing around him, waiting for the sensation to pass. Eventually, it does. Sleep returns, shallow and fragmented. Ethan Miller adapts by withdrawing inward. He sleeps lightly, waking often, but his mind treats these interruptions as neutral data rather than problems. When he opens his eyes in the dark, he mentally reviews instrument readings, measurements, small details from the day before. It gives his thoughts somewhere to go. Ethan has learned that fighting the broken rhythm only worsens it. Acceptance for him is a form of control. Emily Ross struggles more visibly. Her slim frame curls tightly inside her layers, shoulders hunched as if trying to shield herself from the absence of time. She is not used to darkness. that does not end. On her first nights here, she woke repeatedly, checking her watch, counting hours, growing more disoriented with each glance. Now she avoids looking altogether. She has begun to measure rest by how her body feels, rather than what the clock says. It is an adjustment she did not expect to make so quickly. Bear, unaffected by human concepts of night, sleeps and wakes in short cycles. He shifts positions often, lifting his head, listening, then settling again. His pale eyes open briefly when someone moves, then close. He understands only warmth, proximity, and the quiet signals of safety. In this environment, that is enough. Claire Thompson remains awake longer than most. No one asks her to be. There is no schedule requiring it. Yet, at some point during the long stretch of darkness, Claire rises quietly from her place. Her sturdy frame moves with practiced familiarity as she layers clothing and steps toward the small cooking area just outside the shelter. The cold greets her immediately, sharp and dry. But she has prepared for this. She has always believed that routine anchors people when everything else dissolves. Claire lights the burner with careful hands. The flame is small, barely visible, but sufficient. She heats water slowly, shielding it from the wind, and mixes in the remaining ingredients for soup. It is not much. It is not elaborate, but it is warm, and it is something. The smell does not travel far in this cold. Still, it reaches those closest. One by one, people stir. No one questions why she is awake. No one asks why she bothers. They simply accept the cup when it is offered, fingers closing around warmth. These quiet meals become the only reliable markers of time. Not breakfast, not dinner, just intervals of nourishment. When the soup appears, it means enough time has passed that bodies need fuel again. It means the night is still ongoing, but manageable. It means someone is paying attention. Nora Bennett watches these moments closely. She does not intervene unless necessary, but she notes who eats slowly, who hesitates, who struggles to keep eyes open. Her gentle demeanor masks a sharp awareness. In the low light, she adjusts a sleeve here, a scarf there, ensuring circulation is maintained. She has seen what prolonged sleep disruption can do in extreme environments. Confusion, poor judgment, quiet panic. She counters it not with authority, but presence. Outside, the valley remains unchanged. No stars break through. No moonlight sharpens the edges of the land. The cold absorbs everything, including sound. When the wind pauses, the silence feels complete, pressing inward. Inside the shelters, sleep comes in fragments. Some drift in and out, never fully surrendering to rest. Others sink deeply for short periods, then surface abruptly, disoriented. There is no pattern that works for everyone. The body, stripped of its cues, improvises. Sarah notices this and adjusts her expectations. She no longer measures success by how long she sleeps, but by whether she wakes functional. That is the standard now. Enough clarity to work, enough strength to endure, enough rest to avoid mistakes. As the long darkness continues, the group adapts together, unconsciously synchronizing around Claire's quiet rituals and Nora's watchful care. The broken rhythm does not disappear, but it becomes shared and therefore manageable. Eventually, without announcement, The light begins to thin again. Not morning, just less dark. For now, that is sufficient. The shelters do not change the temperature. This becomes clear to anyone who steps inside expecting relief. The cold does not retreat. It follows. It settles into metal walls, into the floor beneath layers of packed snow, into every object that has been still too long. The air inside the shelters is just as cold as the air outside. What the shelters do is something simpler and far more important. They stop the wind. Outside, the wind moves constantly through the valley, sliding down unseen slopes, cutting across open ground, lifting snow into fine, stinging clouds. It is the wind that strips heat from skin, that turns cold into something lethal. Inside the shelters, that movement is gone. The air is still, and still air, even when cold can be survived. Sarah Whitman understands this instinctively. When she enters the shelter, she does not relax, but she does release a fraction of tension she carries everywhere else. Her tall, narrow frame lowers slightly as she moves inside, shoulders rounding just enough to acknowledge the boundary. She has spent years learning how small differences determine survival. Walls do not need to be thick. They need to be enough. The shelters are crude by most standards, curved sheets of metal bolted together, reinforced where possible, half buried by snow that has drifted and compacted around them. The entrances are low, forcing everyone to bend as they enter. Snow piles high against the doors, sometimes nearly sealing them shut. Each time someone exits, they must clear the opening again, careful not to let the wind rush inside too quickly. Inside, light comes from a single oil lamp. It flickers constantly, responding to every slight change in air pressure. The flame is small, fragile, and closely watched. It is not there to warm the shelter. It cannot. Its purpose is visibility, orientation, reassurance. It turns darkness into something that can be navigated. Daniel Harper adjusts the lamp's position with practiced care. His broad hands move slowly, deliberately, ensuring the glass chimney stays clear. Daniel is not gentle by nature, but here he has learned to be precise. He knows how easily a small mistake can ripple outward. The lamp's glow reflects faintly off the metal walls, softening the space just enough to make faces visible. Snow presses against the shelter from the outside, muting sound further. Occasionally, a soft thump announces a shift in the drift. No one reacts. They have learned the difference between danger and background noise. Sleeping arrangements are not negotiated. They are assumed. Everyone turns inward, backs close, bodies aligned in a way that minimizes exposed surface area. No one faces the walls. No one sleeps alone. The shelters are narrow enough that this happens naturally, but even if there were space, no one would choose distance. Ethan Miller settles near the center, his slim build fitting easily between others. He positions himself carefully, adjusting layers so that nothing restricts circulation. Ethan's movements are economical, efficient. He has learned how to arrange his body so that heat loss is minimized without thought. When he finally becomes still, his breathing slows, visible as faint white vapor drifting upward in the lamp's glow. Emily Ross sleeps lightly, her shoulders angled toward Sarah. She does not touch at first. then gradually, unconsciously, shifts closer. The cold teaches boundaries differently. Personal space becomes negotiable. Emily's face is pale in the low light, her lashes catching frost from her breath. She looks younger when she sleeps, tension smoothed away, though it never disappears entirely. Bear lies near the edge of the group, pressed against Daniel's legs. His thick fur traps warmth effectively, and he knows where to position himself without being told. His ears flick occasionally, responding to sounds no one else registers. At times, his breath syncs with the humans around him, rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Nora Bennett moves quietly among them before settling herself. She checks gloves, tucks fabric closer to exposed skin, adjusts a collar that has slipped. Her movements are unobtrusive, almost invisible, but they matter. Nora's calm presence is its own barrier against panic. Her posture remains relaxed, even as her eyes track every detail. She has learned that reassurance does not come from words here, but from consistency. As they sleep, condensation forms. Breath meets cold air and becomes visible. Small clouds of white drifting upward, then settling as frost on the metal ceiling. Over hours, a thin crystalline layer develops. When someone shifts, it dislodges, falling silently onto clothing and hair. No one reacts. This is expected. Moisture is unavoidable. Managing it is the task. Claire Thompson notices it, even in her half-sleep. She has trained herself to remain partially aware, attuned to changes in the environment. Claire's sturdy frame is wrapped in layers that have seen years of use. She sleeps with one arm curled inward, protecting her core, the other resting loosely at her side. Even asleep, her body seems prepared to rise if needed. At some point, the oil lamp dims. Daniel stirs, reaching out without opening his eyes, adjusting the wick. The flame strengthens slightly. No words are exchanged. The motion is practiced, almost automatic. In this space, communication is mostly nonverbal. Outside, snow continues to fall, thickening the drifts. The shelter's door creaks softly under pressure, then holds. The wind slides past, frustrated, unable to reach those inside. Sleep comes unevenly. Some drift in and out, hovering in a state between waking and rest. Others remain still for long stretches, conserving energy. Shivering occurs occasionally, brief and controlled. The body's way of generating heat without movement. Sarah wakes once. Briefly, her breath sharp in the cold. She listens, counts the number of breaths around her, measures their steadiness. Satisfied, she allows her eyes to close again. This is how she rests now. Not by surrendering, but by confirming that everything remains intact. The shelters do not offer comfort. They do not soften the cold. They do not make sleep easy. They simply create a boundary where survival remains possible. And for now, that is enough. Sleep here is not a single act. It is not the moment when eyes close or bodies grow still. It begins long before anyone lies down, and it continues long after the shelters fall quiet. In this place, sleep is assembled piece by piece, like a structure that must hold through the night. Each part supports the others. Remove one, and the entire system weakens. The work starts with the ground. Snow looks soft, but beneath it is frozen earth, and compacted ice that pulls heat relentlessly from anything resting on it. Before anyone settles, insulating pads are laid out carefully, aligned edge to edge. They are not placed for comfort, they are placed for survival. The pads interrupt the transfer of heat, creating a thin boundary between bodies and the cold below. Ethan Miller kneels to adjust one of them, his gloved fingers pressing along the seams. He is slender, almost slight, with narrow shoulders that make him more vulnerable to heat loss. Ethan has always been built more for precision than endurance, and he knows it. He compensates with attention to detail. A gap no wider than a hand could drain warmth through the night. He shifts the pad a few inches, then nods once, satisfied. Across from him, Jacob Reed watches quietly. Jacob is lean and weathered, with a face shaped by wind and years spent outdoors. His hair is cropped short, more practical than stylish, and his eyes are sharp, accustomed to scanning horizons and instruments alike. As a meteorological technician, he has learned to read patterns others overlook. Tonight, he reads people. He notices Ethan's hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but fatigue. Without comment, Jacob removes his inner thermal layer. It is not dramatic. He folds it once and passes it across. "Take it," he says simply. Ethan hesitates. He understands the cost of warmth here. But Jacob's expression leaves no room for debate. Jacob runs warmer. Ethan does not. The system adjusts itself through small, unspoken decisions like this. Sarah Whitman observes from the edge of the shelter. She does not intervene. She has learned that systems function best when allowed to self-correct. Her tall frame is wrapped in carefully chosen layers, each one serving a specific purpose. Years ago, after the incident that forced her to spend a night exposed longer than planned, she stopped treating equipment as separate items. Since then, she thinks only in systems, layers that work together or fail together. She steps forward now to help redistribute sleeping bags. The thickest bag goes to Emily Ross. Emily protests quietly, but Sarah shakes her head. Emily is younger, slimmer, and still adjusting to the demands of this environment. Her body has not yet learned how to conserve heat efficiently. Sarah has seen what happens when pride interferes with practicality. She will not allow that here. Daniel Harper assists, lifting and positioning the heavier bag. His broad shoulders and dense musculature allow him to tolerate thinner insulation without immediate risk. He has learned to accept discomfort as part of the equation, but he also knows his limits. Tonight, he checks them carefully. Nearby, Nora Bennett organizes clothing into small, deliberate piles. Dry layers are separated from those damp with condensation. The difference matters. Even slight moisture compromises insulation. Nora's movements are efficient, practiced, her calm demeanor masking the constant calculations running beneath. She has seen how small oversights accumulate into dangerous situations. She prevents that by staying ahead of them. Boots are removed, not because they are uncomfortable, but because they trap cold. Liners are extracted and placed near bodies where warmth can keep them flexible. Frozen boots in the morning cost time, energy, and risk. This too is part of the system. Bear watches the activity with mild curiosity. His thick fur insulates him naturally, but he understands the importance of positioning. He circles once, then lies down against Daniel's side, his body acting as both heat source and buffer. At 4 years old, Bear has learned these routines as instinct rather than instruction. Breath becomes visible again as people settle. White vapor rises, meets the cold air near the ceiling, and crystallizes. No one comments. Condensation is expected. It will be managed later. Claire Thompson prepares the final element of the system, energy. She distributes small portions of food, dense, simple, efficient. Nuts, dried meat, a small amount of chocolate. Not a meal, but fuel. The body needs something to burn through the night. Sleep without energy is dangerous here. Claire has learned that hunger makes people colder, faster than they expect. No one refuses. Eating happens quietly, deliberately. Each person understands the role this plays. Calories become heat. Heat sustains sleep. Sleep preserves strength. Once the food is gone, the shelter grows still. Sleeping bags are zipped. Collars are tightened. Hoods are drawn close, leaving only narrow openings for breath. Vapor barriers crinkle softly as bodies shift inside them. The sound is familiar now, almost comforting. Sarah lies on her side, knees slightly bent, minimizing exposed surface. She positions her hands near her core, fingers tucked inward. Her posture is deliberate, learned through trial and error. She closes her eyes, but her awareness does not fully fade. Ethan settles nearby, the borrowed layer making a noticeable difference. His breathing slows. He allows himself to relax more deeply than he has in days. He trusts the system. Jacob lies opposite him, arms folded across his chest. He feels the cold more sharply, without the extra layer. But it is manageable. He adjusts his position to compensate, drawing his knees closer. He has chosen this trade knowingly. Daniel shifts once, then stills. His body generates heat steadily, a slow furnace that keeps his core stable. He focuses on breathing evenly, conserving energy. Emily curls into the thicker bag, relief evident even as she fights sleep. Her shoulders loosen slightly. The tension that has lived there since arrival begins to soften. Nora is the last to settle. She pauses, scanning faces in the dim light of the lamp. Everyone is accounted for. Everyone has what they need. Only then does she lie down. The lamp is turned low. Darkness thickens, but not completely. The shelter holds a faint glow, just enough to orient, not enough to disrupt rest. Outside, the wind presses against the metal walls, testing seams and anchors. Inside, the air remains still. This is what sleep looks like here. Not surrender. Coordination. A series of small decisions layered carefully together, each one increasing the odds that morning will come without incident. And for tonight, the system holds. The cold is obvious. Everyone feels it. Everyone prepares for it. The cold announces itself loudly, biting at exposed skin, stiffening fingers, pressing into bones. It is visible, immediate, and expected. Vapor is different. It moves quietly, almost politely. It arrives with every breath, every movement, every small act of survival. And in this place, it is more dangerous than the cold itself. Inside the shelters, the air is still. That stillness makes survival possible, but it also allows moisture to linger. Warm breath meets cold metal and turns instantly to frost. Sweat trapped inside layers cools and stiffens fabric. Steam from cooking rises, invisible for only a moment before crystallizing against the ceiling. No one notices it all at once. It accumulates. Nora Bennett notices first. She has learned to see vapor the way others see weather. Her medium build moves lightly through the shelter, her dark hair braided tightly to keep it from collecting frost. Her eyes trace patterns along the walls, the ceiling, the edges of sleeping bags. Thin white crystals cling there, harmless looking, almost delicate. She raises a gloved hand and brushes gently against a metal wall. A soft snowfall follows. Frost breaks free and drifts downward, settling onto shoulders, sleeves, faces. No one startles. This is familiar now. This, Nora says quietly, is what we manage. She does not lecture. She demonstrates. With a small cloth kept dry inside her jacket, Nora begins wiping the inner walls of the shelter. The frost comes away easily, collecting in the fabric. She moves methodically, section by section, careful not to shake loose more than necessary. Each motion is economical, conserving both energy and heat. Don't scrape, she adds, her voice calm. Wipe. Let it stick to the cloth. Emily Ross watches closely. She is learning quickly, absorbing information not from manuals, but from repetition. Emily's slim fingers take the cloth when Nora offers it. She mimics the motion, tentative at first, then more confident. The frost yields silently. Jacob Reed joins without being asked. He works the opposite wall, taller and broader in stance, but just as careful. His movements are slower, deliberate. He understands that haste introduces moisture through sweat, and sweat is another form of vapor. Claire Thompson focuses on the next layer of the problem. Gloves. They lie in a small cluster near her, stiffened from earlier use. They look dry. They are not. Claire lifts one and bends it slightly. The fabric resists. Ice has formed within the fibers, invisible but present. She does not bring them near the lamp. Heat from flame introduces more vapor. Instead, she tucks the gloves beneath her outer layers, close to her torso, where her body heat can do the work slowly. Claire is built solidly, shoulders strong from years of carrying loads others avoid. Her body generates steady warmth. She uses it deliberately, knowing its limits. One glove at a time. No rushing. Daniel Harper notices and mirrors the action with his own damp socks, slipping them into the space between his base layers. His face tightens briefly at the discomfort. Wet fabric against skin is unpleasant, but he does not complain. He knows the alternative is worse. Sarah Whitman watches all of this with quiet approval. She has always believed that survival is a discipline of details. Vapor is the detail most people ignore until it is too late. Years ago, in a different environment, she learned that a soaked sleeve can end a night faster than a broken zipper. Since then, she treats moisture with the same seriousness as injury. She checks her own layers now, fingers moving beneath fabric, feeling for stiffness. Satisfied, she exhales carefully through the opening of her hood, directing her breath outward rather than into her sleeping bag. It fogs briefly, then vanishes into the cold air beyond. Breathing, too, must be managed. Inside sleeping bags, moisture is a constant threat. Every exhale carries warmth and water vapor. If trapped, it condenses within insulation, slowly robbing it of loft. Sarah shifts slightly, adjusting the angle of her hood so that her breath escapes rather than lingers. Nearby, Ethan Miller does the same, consciously this time. He has felt the weight of moisture building inside his gear over previous nights. Tonight, he is careful. His movements are small, precise, as if calibrating an instrument. Bear lifts his head, sniffing the air. His breath steams softly, frost forming along his whiskers. He shakes once, sending tiny ice crystals scattering. Then he settles again, unfazed. His thick coat manages moisture naturally, but even he prefers dry air. Cooking earlier has added to the problem. The soup that sustained them has also released steam, which now coats the shelter's interior. This is the trade-off no one argues with. Warm food is non-negotiable. Vapor is the cost. Managing that cost becomes a shared, wordless effort. Nora finishes wiping one section and hands the cloth to Jacob, who passes it to Emily. Claire rotates gloves, replacing those warming against her body with another damp pair. Daniel adjusts the position of his socks. Sarah checks seams, hoods, openings. No one complains. No one dramatizes the discomfort. They have learned that vapor punishes impatience and rewards consistency. Outside, the temperature remains unchanged. Snow continues to fall, thick and silent. The wind presses against the shelter, but cannot enter. Inside, moisture is the only thing that moves freely. As the shelter grows quieter, condensation slows, breath becomes steadier. Bodies generate less heat as sleep deepens, reducing vapor production slightly. This is the window Nora has been waiting for. She makes one final pass along the walls, gathering the last of the loose frost. The cloth is now stiff, heavy with ice. She places it near the entrance, away from sleeping bags, where it can freeze completely without harming anything else. She returns to her place and settles carefully, mindful not to disturb the fragile balance they have created. Sleep resumes, shallow but sustained. From time to time, someone shifts, causing a faint cascade of frost to fall. Each time, it is brushed away quietly. The system adapts. Vapor never disappears. It is not defeated. It is managed. And that management, patient, unglamorous, repetitive, is what allows the night to pass without incident. By the time the light outside thins slightly again, the shelter holds together. Insulation remains effective. Clothing, though not dry, is drier. The damage vapor could have done has been slowed enough to matter. For now, that is victory. Sleep does not arrive here as a single event. It comes in pieces, short intervals of drifting awareness, long stretches of stillness where the body is not fully resting, only enduring. In this place, deep sleep is not a gift. It is a risk. When the body relaxes too completely, heat production slows. Core temperature follows. The system that has been assembled so carefully begins to slip. So the body refuses. Inside the shelter, breathing remains shallow and controlled. Muscles stay slightly tense. Even in rest, there is work being done. Ethan Miller wakes first. The cold does not announce itself loudly. It enters as a sensation rather than pain. a creeping awareness along his feet, a dull ache that spreads upward. His eyes open to darkness. For a moment, he cannot tell where he is. Then the faint sounds return. Fabric shifting, the soft hiss of breath, the distant pressure of wind on metal. His toes feel numb. Ethan shifts, careful not to disturb the layers around him. The borrowed thermal layer has helped, but the cold has found its way in regardless. He curls inward, pulling his knees closer, trying to trap warmth. It is not enough. Jacob Reed senses the movement. He does not open his eyes. Years of field work have taught him how to register changes without fully waking. He reaches out, broad hand finding Ethan's shoulder through layers of fabric. With a steady pull, he draws Ethan closer, closing the gap between them. Bodies aligned. Shared warmth becomes immediate. Ethan exhales shakily. "It's okay," Jacob murmurs, barely audible. 2 words. No questions. No instructions. The effect is immediate. The reassurance is not logical, but physiological. Tension eases slightly. Breathing steadies. Heat begins to redistribute. Nearby, Sarah Whitman stirs. She does not intervene. She listens instead, counting breaths again, measuring the rhythm of the shelter. Everything is within acceptable limits. She allows herself to settle back into stillness. Though sleep never fully claims her, someone else wakes briefly. Emily Ross, perhaps. Drawn to consciousness by movement she does not understand, she hears the quiet exchange. The words register without context, but their meaning is clear enough. "Okay," she whispers, almost to herself. It is not a conversation, it is a confirmation. Daniel Harper wakes later, shivering lightly. His body responds with small, controlled tremors, generating heat without draining energy too quickly. He recognizes the pattern and does not fight it. Shivering is part of the system. It will stop on its own. He adjusts his position, careful to keep his shoulders insulated, mindful of where the shelter wall curves closest. Contact with metal, even through layers, accelerates heat loss. He shifts just enough to avoid it, then stills again. Bear lifts his head, sensing the change. He presses closer to Daniel's legs, offering warmth without being asked. His presence is solid, reassuring. His breathing is slow and steady, a metronome in the dark. Nora Bennett remains half awake through it all. She has learned that survival sleep requires vigilance, even when exhausted. Her eyes remain closed, but her awareness tracks the shelter's subtle changes. The cadence of breath, the frequency of movement, the way the air feels against her skin. Everything is quiet enough. That is what matters. At some point, the cold tightens again. This is expected. The early hours are always the hardest. Energy reserves dip. The body's furnace burns lower. Extremities suffer first. Fingers grow stiff. Faces ache where breath escapes. A quiet sound breaks the stillness, not a voice. A shift of fabric. Sarah opens her eyes again. A sleeping bag zipper moves slightly, then stops. Someone is adjusting their hood, trying to direct breath outward. She recognizes the motion and relaxes. No intervention needed. Then, from the darkness, a voice. Soft, careful, still warm. It is Claire Thompson. Her tone is calm, unhurried. She has woken not because something is wrong, but because she senses a transition. Claire's body is accustomed to waking in these moments, responding to subtle cues others miss. A pause follows. Then Daniel answers, equally quiet. Warm enough. Jacob adds a single word. Good. Claire exhales slowly and settles again. These exchanges are not about information. They are about reassurance. They signal that someone is paying attention, that the system remains intact. Sleep resumes, lighter now. Dreams, when they come, are fragmented and brief. Ethan dreams of numbers that refuse to settle, readings that flicker just out of focus. Emily dreams of warmth without context. No images, just sensation. Daniel dreams of movement, walking without resistance, then wakes abruptly when the cold reasserts itself. No one reaches deep sleep. No one expects to. Time stretches, then compresses. Minutes feel long. Hours pass unnoticed. The body drifts, surfaces, drifts again. Shivering cycles repeat. Warmth accumulates, fades. Each oscillation costs energy, but not too much. The balance holds. At the coldest point of the night, someone whispers again, "All right." It is not directed at anyone in particular. It does not require a response. The word hangs briefly in the air, then dissolves into breath. Outside, the wind eases slightly. The pressure on the shelter shifts. Snow settles. Inside, the stillness deepens. Gradually, without ceremony, the darkness lightens. Not dawn, just less dark. The blue tint returns, faint and diffuse, filtering through the shelter's seams. Bodies sense it before minds do. Breathing changes. Muscles loosen slightly. The worst of the night has passed. Ethan realizes he is warm again. Not comfortable, but warm enough. He remains still, conserving the fragile heat he has rebuilt. Around him, the shelter holds its shape. No alarms, no urgency. Survival sleep has done its job, not by restoring, but by sustaining. And for this place, that is the only standard that matters. Night here is defined less by what can be seen than by what can be heard. When the light fades into its familiar, colorless dimness, the valley does not grow louder. It grows selective. Sound becomes rare, precise, almost intentional. Every noise that remains feels important, as if it has earned the right to exist. At first, there is wind. It slides across the open ground, presses against the shelters, traces their curved walls with a steady hand. The metal responds with a low, patient hum. Anchor lines tighten and relax in slow rhythm, producing a faint, repetitive vibration. These sounds are not alarming. They are familiar. They tell the group that the structures are holding, that the outside world is moving as expected. Inside the shelter, Sarah Whitman listens. She has always been a listener, more than a talker. Tall and spare, with a posture shaped by years of readiness, Sarah has learned to read environments through sound long before sight offers clarity. Earlier in her career, during a prolonged whiteout, she learned that the first sign of trouble often arrived as a change in noise, a pitch altered by stress, a pause where there should be continuity. Tonight, the sounds are steady. She lets her shoulders drop slightly. Daniel Harper hears them too, though he interprets them differently. His broad chest rises and falls slowly, breath controlled, measured. Daniel has learned to count patterns when anxiety threatens to surface. Wind against metal, line against ice, breath after breath. The repetition calms him, giving his thoughts a place to rest. Ethan Miller hears something else. Beneath the external sounds, he notices the quieter ones, the internal rhythms, the faint rustle of fabric as someone shifts, the almost imperceptible click of ice crystals settling on metal. The way sound seems to vanish after travelling only a short distance, as if absorbed by the cold itself. This silence is not empty. It is dense. Emily Ross lies awake longer than she expects. Her slim frame is curled inward, chin tucked, listening. At home, silence had always meant the absence of noise. Here, it means presence. Every sound that remains feels closer, more intimate. She hears Jacob Reed's breathing behind her. Slow, even. She recognizes the cadence now, familiar enough to be reassuring. Jacob's breathing has become a marker for her. Tall and wiry, Jacob carries himself with quiet certainty. He rarely speaks at night, but his steady rhythm signals stability. Emily has learned that when his breathing remains unchanged, conditions are acceptable. Bear adds his own layer to the soundscape. The dog's breathing is deeper, slower. A low vibration felt more than heard. Occasionally, he releases a soft huff, then settles again. His body presses against Daniel's legs. Warmth exchanged without thought. Bear does not question silence. He inhabits it comfortably. At some point, the wind shifts. Not dramatically, just enough. The hum against the shelter fades. The anchor lines fall still. Outside, movement pauses. Silentness arrives fully. It is immediate and unmistakable. The absence of sound presses inward, filling the space where noise once existed. It is not peaceful in the way silence is often described. It is complete, total, the kind of quiet that leaves nothing to hide behind. Inside the shelter, everyone feels it. Breathing becomes more noticeable. Each inhale sounds louder, closer. Exhales carry faint echoes against fabric and metal. The rhythm of life inside the shelter stands in sharp contrast to the stillness outside. Ethan becomes aware of his own heartbeat. At first, it startles him. A soft thud, then another. He places a gloved hand against his chest, feeling the steady pulse. The sound is not loud, but in this silence, it feels amplified. He slows his breathing intentionally, letting the rhythm settle. Emily hears it too. Her own heart, beating faster than she expects. She focuses on Jacob's breathing again, syncing her own breath to his pace. Slowly, her heart rate follows. Daniel notices the silence as a physical sensation. It presses against his ears, making them ring faintly. He swallows, then stills. He knows this feeling. It comes when the environment removes all distraction, forcing attention inward. Sarah remains calm. She has experienced deeper silence than this. On a past assignment, she once spent hours inside a snow cave, while a storm erased every external sound. That night taught her that silence is not absence. It is exposure. It reveals what is already there. Tonight, what is there is stability. Nora Bennett, half awake, registers the shift without alarm. She has learned to differentiate between dangerous silence and neutral silence. Dangerous silence follows sudden change. This one arrives gently, as the natural settling of the night. She does not move. In the quiet, the presence of others becomes tangible. A shoulder nearby, a knee touching fabric, the shared warmth moving slowly between bodies. No one speaks. No one needs to. The silence itself becomes a form of communication. It says, the wind has paused. The shelter holds. You are not alone. Minutes pass. Or hours. It is impossible to tell. Eventually the wind returns. Softly at first. A faint brush against metal. A low whisper along the shelter's edge. The silence loosens its grip, retreating without ceremony. Inside, breaths deepen slightly. Muscles relax by degrees. Emily drifts closer to sleep. Ethan's heartbeat fades into the background. Daniel adjusts once, then stills. Sarah closes her eyes fully this time, trusting the familiar sounds to wake her if needed. The night continues, marked not by events, but by the quiet agreement between sound and silence. Each takes its turn, each plays its role, and in that balance, the group rests. Morning does not arrive as relief. It does not bring renewal, warmth, or a sense of completion. Here, morning is simply the moment when lying still becomes impossible. The cold tightens its grip during the final hours of darkness, drawing heat steadily from bodies that have already given all they can afford. Eventually, the balance tips. Staying inside the sleeping bag hurts more than leaving it. Sarah Whitman is the first to accept this truth. Her eyes open without urgency, but her body has already decided. The cold along her shoulders and hips has sharpened, no longer dull and distant, but insistent. She exhales slowly, creating a small cloud inside her hood, then lets it escape outward. Her tall, lean frame shifts carefully, testing stiffness in her joints before committing to movement. Years ago, she learned that sudden motions in extreme cold invite injury. Now, every action is deliberate. She does not sit up immediately. Instead, she reaches inside her sleeping bag and retrieves a compact energy bar from an inner pocket, the wrapper already soft from body heat. She breaks off a piece with gloved fingers and chews slowly. The food is dense, flavorless, and hard to swallow. It does not matter. Calories now will become heat in minutes. Around her, others follow the same quiet routine. Daniel Harper wakes with a sharp intake of breath, his body reacting to the sudden awareness of cold. His broad shoulders tense, then settle as he controls the impulse to move too quickly. Daniel has always relied on strength to solve problems, but this environment has taught him restraint. He pulls his knees closer, eats from his own stash, and waits for warmth to return to his core before doing anything else. Ethan Miller wakes next, not because he is ready, but because his feet have grown numb again. He flexes his toes inside his socks, wincing slightly as sensation returns in uneven waves. Ethan's build has never favored endurance in cold climates, and he knows it. He compensates by managing transitions carefully. He eats slowly, counting breaths, allowing the food time to work before attempting to sit up. Emily Ross stirs quietly, blinking against the dim light that seeps through the shelter's seams. Her face looks younger in the morning, softened by fatigue. She has not slept deeply, but she has rested enough. Enough is the only standard here. She eats her energy bar in small bites, jaw tight against the cold, then tucks the wrapper away methodically. Bear wakes when the shelter stirs. He lifts his head, shakes once, and stretches carefully, muscles rippling beneath his thick coat. Frost scatters from his fur in fine crystals. At 4 years old, Bear has learned mornings here well. He does not rush toward the door. He waits, watching the humans complete their slow rituals, his breath steady and visible. The shelter remains quiet. No one speaks. Conversation wastes heat, and mornings offer no new information worth sharing. Everyone already knows what must happen next. Putting on clothing is the hardest part. Layers that were flexible the night before have stiffened into awkward shapes. Fabric crackles softly as it moves, ice crystals embedded within fibers, resisting change. Sarah pulls on her outer jacket inch by inch, careful not to strain seams. The garment fights her, then slowly yields. She flexes her arms once, twice, restoring circulation. Daniel struggles briefly with a boot, the leather rigid from cold. He does not curse. He presses it between his hands, warming it gradually, then slides his foot in. It takes longer than it should. Everything takes longer here. Nora Bennett moves among them quietly, her presence steady and unhurried. She checks fingers for color, eyes for focus, movements for coordination. Nora is of average height, her posture relaxed but attentive. Years in field medicine have taught her how quickly minor issues escalate in cold environments. She says little, but her gaze lingers where needed. Claire Thompson finishes dressing last. Her sturdy frame handles the cold with practiced tolerance. But even she feels it now. She secures her final layer, then retrieves the remaining food supplies, organizing them for later use. Claire's strength has always been consistency rather than speed. She ensures that nothing essential is forgotten, even when everyone is eager to move. When the shelter door opens, cold air rushes in immediately, sharp and dry. The group steps out one by one. The light outside is unchanged from hours before. Thin, blue, distant. Snow has drifted higher against the shelters, nearly covering the lower edges. The wind has returned. Not strong, but persistent enough to demand attention. Breath plumes into the air, then vanishes. No one lingers. Sarah looks across the group, her gaze moving from face to face. She does not issue instructions. She does not need to. Their routines are shared now, internalized through repetition. Daniel meets her eyes and gives a single nod. Jacob Reed adjusts his gear, already scanning the horizon for changes in weather patterns. His tall, wiry frame moves with quiet efficiency. The cold has sharpened his focus rather than dulled it. Ethan checks his instruments briefly, ensuring they survive the night. He makes a small note, then secures them again. Work will continue. It always does. Emily tightens her hood and takes her place among them, movements less tentative than before. She has learned the pace of this place. Bear steps forward, tail low, ears alert. There is no sense of beginning here, no fresh start, just continuation. The work resumes not because they are ready, but because stopping is not an option. The cold does not pause for rest. The valley does not wait. They move forward together, carrying the night with them in stiff muscles and shallow sleep. Already preparing for the next time they will have to lie down and negotiate with the dark again. Morning passes without ceremony. And that Here is normal. The storm announces itself long before it arrives. Jacob Reed is the first to notice the shift. He pauses mid-step, eyes lifting toward the horizon, where the sky has taken on a heavier tone, the pale blue deepening into something denser, more opaque. The air feels different, thicker, slower, carrying weight. Jacob's tall, wiry frame straightens as he studies the movement of clouds barely visible through the haze. Years of reading weather have taught him that danger does not rush. It gathers. He does not raise his voice when he speaks. "Snow's building," he says simply. That is enough. Within minutes, the wind sharpens. It does not howl yet, but it begins to push with intent, driving fine snow across the ground in long, low sheets. Visibility shrinks. Distances collapse inward. The valley that had felt vast now feels enclosed, as if the storm is drawing a boundary around them. Sarah Whitman watches the change without panic. Tall and lean, her posture remains steady, her expression focused rather than alarmed. She has seen storms like this before. Storms that arrive not with violence, but with persistence. The kind that do not pass quickly. The kind that demand patience. "We stay," she says, not as an order, but as a conclusion already reached. No one argues. By the time they reach the shelters again, snow is falling thickly, clinging to fabric and gear. The wind rises, threading itself through every gap it can find. Inside the metal walls, the sound deepens into a constant pressure, a reminder that the outside world is no longer negotiable. They will not be leaving for a while. Hours turn into a full day, then another. The storm does not rage dramatically. It simply continues. Snow piles higher against the shelters, pressing nearly to the tops of the doors. The wind rarely stops. And when it does, the silence feels tense rather than calm. Every exit is measured. Every opening is cleared carefully, then sealed again. Claire Thompson takes control of food distribution early. Her sturdy build moves with practiced efficiency as she inventories supplies. There is no hoarding, no quiet calculation of personal needs. Claire divides everything evenly, portions measured to last. She has always believed that fairness reduces fear. In extreme conditions, fear wastes energy faster than hunger. No one questions her decisions. They eat together, sitting close, backs to the curved walls. Meals are quiet, but more frequent now. Small portions spaced carefully to keep energy levels stable. The food is simple, repetitive, but it does its job. Between meals, Ethan Miller works. He kneels near the equipment stored inside the shelter, tools laid out neatly, despite the cramped space. Ethan's slim hands move with careful precision, fingers stiff, but controlled. One of the monitoring devices has begun to fail. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to threaten the timeline of their work. Ethan does not complain. He focuses. For hours, he disassembles and reassembles components, warming parts against his body before testing them again. His face is drawn with concentration, lips pressed thin. He knows the importance of this data, knows how much effort it took to gather. Missing the deadline would mean extending their stay once the storm passes, something none of them want. When the device finally responds, steady and reliable again, Ethan exhales for the first time in what feels like days. "It'll hold," he says quietly. A small sound of relief moves through the shelter. Nora Bennett has her own work. On the second night of the storm, Daniel Harper begins to cough. It starts softly, a dry sound that echoes too clearly in the confined space. Nora notices immediately. She moves to him without urgency, her calm demeanor masking focused attention. Daniel tries to wave her off. He always does. "It's nothing," he says. Nora does not argue. She places a gloved hand lightly against his wrist, feeling his pulse, checking warmth in his fingers. His skin is colder than it should be. His breathing is shallow. "Layers," she says gently, "and rest." She adjusts his clothing, adds insulation, encourages him to drink more warm liquid. She does not hover, but she stays close, watching for changes. Daniel submits reluctantly. He has learned over time to trust her judgment, even when it challenges his pride. By the third day, conversation returns. Not constant, not loud, but present, with nowhere to go and nothing to do but wait. Words begin to fill the long hours. Emily Ross talks about home, about trees and rain, about the sound of traffic she never thought she would miss. Her voice is quiet, thoughtful. She does not complain. She reflects. Jacob listens more than he speaks, adding a comment here and there, dry and understated. Claire shares a story from a winter long past, when a team survived isolation by turning meals into rituals. Even Sarah offers a brief memory, a rare thing for her. A moment from early in her career that taught her the value of staying together when everything else urges separation. They sleep closer now, not because the system requires it, but because the storm has narrowed their world further. Bodies pressed together naturally, warmth shared without calculation. Bear shifts constantly, moving from one person to another, distributing heat as if on instinct. The storm continues. No one leaves. No one suggests it. They endure together, marking time with meals, repairs, quiet conversations, and sleep that comes in fragments, but is never faced alone. Eventually, the wind begins to weaken, not suddenly, just enough to notice. Snowfall lightens. The pressure against the shelter eases. On the fourth morning, a pale blue light filters through gaps that had been sealed by white for days. The storm is loosening its hold, tall. They do not rush out. They wait. When they finally step outside, the valley looks different. Softened, reshaped. Snow lies deep and unbroken. The world feels hushed, as if holding its breath after exertion. They stand together for a moment, saying nothing. They are tired. Colder than they would like, but intact. No one was left behind. The storm does not end with spectacle. It loosens its grip quietly, releasing the valley one careful breath at a time. Snowfall thins into drifting flakes, then pauses altogether. The wind recedes, leaving behind a stillness that feels earned rather than imposed. Light returns in its familiar, pale way, blue and distant, but steady. The shelters stand unchanged. Snowbanks slope gently away from their curved walls. The marks of pressure and persistence etched into the metal. They look smaller now, less defiant, as if they have completed the task they were built for and are ready to be forgotten. Sarah Whitman steps outside first. Tall and lean, she moves slowly, letting her eyes travel across the valley, as if committing it to memory. Her face is calm, but there is a softness there that was not present when they arrived. Sarah has always measured places by what they demand rather than what they offer. This valley demanded patience, attention, and trust. She nods once, acknowledging that debt. Behind her, Daniel Harper follows, his broad frame moving more easily, now that the worst has passed. The cough has faded, replaced by a steady breath that no longer catches in the cold. He adjusts his gloves and flexes his fingers, checking for stiffness. There is discomfort, but no damage. He meets Sarah's eyes briefly and gives a small smile. Something rare for him in this environment. Relief, tempered by respect. Ethan Miller emerges next, cradling the repaired device close to his chest. His slight stoop is more pronounced today, the result of long hours bent over equipment and the weight of responsibility finally easing. He looks out across the snow, then down at the shelters, as if confirming that both the data and the people made it through intact. For Ethan, success has always been quiet. This is no different. Emily Ross steps out carefully, boots sinking into softened snow. Her movements are more confident now, less tentative. She lifts her face to the light, eyes narrowed against the brightness. Emily arrived here uncertain of her place. She leaves understanding it. The cold did not welcome her, but it taught her how to stay. Jacob Reed scans the sky instinctively, habit refusing to fade. Tall and wiry, his posture relaxes only after he confirms what he already knows. The storm has truly moved on. He exhales slowly, the sound barely audible. Jacob's work is often invisible when done correctly. He prefers it that way. Claire Thompson appears last, carrying the final pack with the same steady competence she has shown throughout. Her sturdy frame bears the weight without complaint. She takes a moment to check the shelters one last time, ensuring nothing remains that could be useful to someone else one day. Claire has always believed that places remember how they are treated. Bear bounds out ahead of everyone, energy returning with the light. His dark fur contrasts sharply against the white ground, frost still clinging to his whiskers. He circles the group once, tail low but wagging, then stops, ears perked. At 4 years old, Bear has learned to recognize endings. He senses change and welcomes it without needing explanation. The sound arrives before it can be seen. A distant thrum, low and rhythmic, growing gradually stronger. The helicopter approaches from the south, its outline emerging against the pale sky. Snow lifts from the ground as the air shifts, spiraling outward in controlled chaos. The machine settles into position with practiced precision, rotors cutting clean arcs through the cold air. No one rushes forward. They stand together instead, a loose line forming naturally beside the shelters. For a moment, the helicopter's presence feels intrusive, a reminder that this place will soon recede into memory. Sarah raises a hand briefly to shield her eyes, then lowers it. Before boarding, they pause. No one speaks. They look back at the shelters. The narrow entrances, the curved walls, the snow-packed seams. These structures did not offer comfort. They did not provide warmth. They offered something more basic, a boundary where survival remained possible. Daniel rests a gloved hand on the metal briefly, then withdraws it. Ethan adjusts his grip on the equipment. Emily takes a slow breath. Jacob nods once, As if concluding a conversation only he can hear, Claire presses her lips together, expression thoughtful. Nora Bennett stands slightly apart, observing rather than participating. Of average height and calm demeanor, Nora has always understood the importance of closure. She watches each face, noting the subtle shifts, the relief, the fatigue, the quiet pride. She does not need to say anything. The moment speaks for itself. They survived because they stayed together, not because of fire, not because of machines, not because of strength alone, because of proximity, attention, shared responsibility. One by one, they board the helicopter. Inside, the warmth feels unreal at first. Muscles loosen too quickly. The body resists the sudden change, unsure whether to trust it. Daniel sits heavily, closing his eyes for a moment. Ethan secures the equipment, then leans back carefully. Emily looks out the window, watching the shelters shrink beneath them, bare curls at their feet, already half asleep. As the helicopter lifts, the valley opens beneath them. Wide, quiet, indifferent. Snow smooths over their tracks, erasing evidence of their presence with practiced ease. The shelters become small shapes, then indistinct marks, then nothing at all. Sarah watches until they disappear. She does not wave. She carries the experience forward instead. The flight is steady and uneventful. No one speaks much. Words feel unnecessary. Each person processes the departure in their own way, carrying memories shaped by cold, silence, and shared nights. When the helicopter finally banks toward warmer air, sunlight strengthens slightly, and the world begins to resemble something familiar again. Shoulders ease. Breaths deepen. The mission is complete. They will return to places with walls that hold heat, beds that allow deep sleep, nights marked by comfort rather than calculation. Those things will feel different now, appreciated in a way they were not before. As they move away from the cold, one understanding remains. Even in the harshest places, warmth exists. Not from fire, not from insulation, but from the people who stay close when distance would be easier. This story was never only about cold, snow, or distant places. It was about what people do when comfort disappears. In extreme conditions, survival does not come from strength alone. It comes from preparation, patience, and the quiet decision to stay connected. No one in this story endured because they were fearless. They endured because they paid attention to small things, shared what they had, and refused to leave one another behind. Everyday life is not Alaska, but difficulty still finds us. There are moments when sleep feels shallow, when days repeat without relief, when the weight of responsibility makes rest feel impossible. In those moments, the lesson is the same. Do not face hardship alone. Build small systems that support you. Eat when you should. Rest when you can. Speak gently. Stay close to people who steady you. Progress does not always come from big changes. Sometimes it comes from small, consistent decisions made every day. If this story brought you calm, comfort, or perspective, take a moment to carry it forward. Share it with someone who might need quiet reassurance tonight. Leave a comment and tell us where you are listening from. Subscribe to the channel so these stories can continue to be a place of rest in your routine. And as you return to your own life, may God watch over you, protect your nights, and give you strength in difficult seasons. May you find warmth in community, patience in hardship, and peace in moments of rest. If this message resonates with you, feel free to comment Amen